consider the following code segment. All right, so num is initialized here, and the initial value, we don't know what it is. And B1 is declared here and actually initialized in the if. So based on if these conditions are true or false, B1 will be set to a true or false. At the bottom, our question is asking which of the statements will give basically the same assignment for all of the values. So we're looking for a logical equivalent that the conditions are the same as the ones that you have here, okay? So if we look at the value Boolean here, the Boolean will be set to true if the conditions are true, and it will be set to false if the conditions are false. So all we have to do is check which conditions are true, and we write those conditions out, and if those conditions are not true, then it will set the false. So this is actually a very tricky question, but it's not as difficult with some practice as it may seem, but it is probably one of the most difficult ones on here. So notice that the condition that will set B1 to true here is that it's both bigger than 0 and also that this if is also true, right? So in order for B1 to be set to true here, this first condition has to be true and the second if condition also has to be true. So both num has to be greater than 0 and also num has to be less than 100. Now, that's not the only condition that it'll set B1 to true. If you notice, right under this, we also have B1 being set to true here. So what condition would allow me to go into that area of the conditional? Well, this would be that we are falling into the else. Okay, the only way to get to that else is that this if was actually a false. So it's the opposite of greater than 0, which means that num is less than or equal to 0. So if num is not greater than 0, which means that it's less than or equal to 0, then I will go into here. But also, not only that has to be the case, but also this second if also has to be true. So the num has to be less than or equal to 0, and the num has to be greater than negative 100. So there's two ways for the B1 to be set to true. This is one way, or the second way is that num is less than or equal to 0, and that num is greater than negative 100. Okay, so if we think about these numbers, there's two ways for the B1 value to get true. Num has to be bigger than 0 and less than 100, or it could be less than 0 and including 0, and be bigger than negative 100. So really, if we simplify this, we're looking at all numbers between negative 100 and 100, right? This would be the numbers exactly between 0 and 100. And these would be the numbers exactly between negative 100 and 0, including 0. So that would be just all numbers between negative 100 and 100. So looking at the answer choices, our answer would be A. The values that are bigger than negative 100 and less than 100. If it falls anywhere in between negative 100 and 100, then B1 will be set to true.